Welcome back to another episode of The Sweet Spot. This is John Sherman from the Four Foundations of Golf. And as always, I'm joined by.
Adam from Adam in Golf.
So today we're going to revisit a topic that we like to cover on this show, which is, I guess we can call it golf fitness, getting your body healthier, stronger, ability to withstand injury, swinging faster, more mobile, all that stuff. So with that, we have someone who I believe is an expert in this category. He's been doing it for a long time, built up a nice following and a nice business around it. We have Chris Finn from Par4Success. Chris, welcome to the Sweet Spot.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we want to get your, we've spoken to multiple fitness experts over the years, and I think everyone has a little bit of a different spin on things. And you have some interesting research you've done over the years with your clients. And we'll get into some of that research in the episode. So before we get into that, why don't you just give a quick introduction, how long you've been doing this, what you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. So I was a strength coach, so I paid my way through physio school, and I'm a physical therapist as well. And then basically came out. I guess been out a little over 15. Yeah, I guess I'm old. Yeah, definitely over 15 years. I've been doing this, basically within the first year or so. Realized I just kind of wanted to do my own thing and loved golf and got into this whole space. So Par for Success has really kind of just evolved from the back of my car to we were in a shed to fast forward 15 years later, we've helped, I think our database at this point is well over 15,000, and we've got a beautiful kind of HQ here in Raleigh and work with people on 5 different continents and all over the world remotely. So it's been quite the journey. But I think the genesis of all of that was when I got into the games, probably 2010 ish. You said kind of everybody has their own spin. That's literally all there was kind of spins or ideas or kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
this is, I joke, this is back in the day. Like now some people know what the heck golf fitness is. Back then I had to sell them on what the heck golf fitness was and that it would actually help them. And then B sudden like, hey, and you should work with me. So this is like, people don't even know what it was. But it's come so far in the last decade and a half, 2 decades. And really it's what we do has been all the genesis of, I think this works. Let's prove it. And I think that's kind of really been the basis of our data driven approach to try to always make sure we're only doing things with people that we know is going to work.
Yeah. I still think personally, like, I know it's come a long way, and I still think there's a long way to go in terms of
Yeah.
educating everyday golfers, because the interaction I always get with people whenever I mention, lifting weights or stuff, like, people get so overwhelmed. They're like, where do I start? Because again, there are so many resources, and you're like, well, do I do this program or this program? And unfortunately with fitness, like many other things, when you get overwhelmed, you just don't do it. Right. Like, you just like, I can't do this. It's too much.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with golf instruction too, right? It's like, well, is it? Do I need equipment? Is it something wrong with my hands? Like, there's just so many entry points of information. It's just no different in fitness, and obviously with the explosion of social media in the last decade plus. I mean, if you click on one fitness thing, now you're getting 20 different approaches to something, and you're getting exercise. I mean, you guys know, there's thousands of drills, and if a golfer doesn't know what the hell they're supposed to be doing, which of the thousand do they pick, right? And so
Yeah.
it's no
So how do
different.
you guys so how do you guys handle it? Do you take I know you work directly with golfers one on one, and I'm sure you have more quote unquote generic info, but like, what's your 40,000-foot view on like the basic goals of golf fitness?
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit it, the basic goals when you did the intro, right? Like most people want to play the game longer. They want to do so without pain. Nobody likes hitting it shorter than they ever did, and most guys still want to hit it farther, even if they're hitting it the farthest they ever have. So there's usually a distance component. There's definitely a longevity component, and that's different depending on the stage people are in. If you're a collegiate player, longevity for you is making it to the pros. If you're a 55-year-old guy, you're trying to play into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? So I think those are very universal tenets that we see of goals of of fitness, and then obviously the pain. So I think that's back pain, elbow pain. Like nobody's playing golf if they're hurting. So it's trying to, how do you accomplish longevity while hitting it farther and do so without pain? I think that in a nutshell is why people will kind of pursue a fitness to help their golf side of things.
What is the distance drop off, or I should say club speed drop off over ages? When does it start to decline? Because I'm hitting 42 in a couple of months, and My speed is okay, but I'm just waiting for it to happen. And I suppose then you got two answers to this. It's like, okay, what's the club drop off if you do nothing versus if you actually train and do things?
Yeah. So I think when we look at our population data, when we look at our data set of not, basically everybody comes in and like basically looking at it of who has not trained with us. Like that's how we kind of will define it. And what we look at when we, basically speeds will go up, if we look at decades, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, it's definitely starts to drop 30s versus their 20s, but the big kind of drop really is right around 41, coincidentally enough for you.
You're on the map. You are here.
You're at that point, Adam. But obviously it's different for everybody. This is looking at tens of thousands of people. Some people are fine till they're 45 or 50. Other people start to see it significantly in their 30s. I think ultimately it comes down to we take all of the data. The reason we do all the research is to try to simplify it so that my 12-year-old son could understand it. And it's basically, do you have the mobility required in honestly, the three most important areas for rotation? Do you have the strength relative to the speed that you're wanting to swing? And can you produce that strength as quick as possible, right? So that's your power. Basically, if you look at those three metrics from a physical side, we at this point can very cleanly say, hey, you're safe, quote unquote, safe predicted top end club head speed where your body is likely to not break down is X based on these metrics. And unfortunately, most players who are good golfers, when they get to 41, are so optimized technique and equipment wise that they actually outpace what their body can do. And so you're able to hold that for a long enough time. You see it in tour guys where they start to break down, like a Zalatoris or JT, and the guys aren't massive. Their bodies start to kind of break down. And I think for the average human who's not swinging 120 plus on tour and traveling all over the place, that definitely tends to happen in the early 40s, for sure.
But my 100-mile-an-hour club speed's not doing too much damage to my body then, probably.
I think you're okay. You're okay for now, Adam. You probably that, but you bring up a good point, obviously in jest, but like if you're 41, 40, if you say you're 41, 42, right? And you're swinging 120 miles an hour versus a guy who's swinging 100 versus a guy who's swinging 90. The guy who's 90 could have terrible mobility, can just suck at everything, strength and power. He's probably not going to hurt too bad because he's not driving the car real fast. The guy at 120 has a much smaller margin of error and a lot higher likelihood of being hurt, assuming that the physical capabilities were all the same. So it is relative. I think a lot of people ask always, like, based on age. The cool thing that we've done in our database is not only can we look at how do you compare based on your age, but also, hey, you're swinging 100, you want to go to 110. Well, what are the physical requirements that are necessary to get there? And where are we at now? What's the delta? And let's design something to kind of cover that delta. Because for somebody it may be mobility, and someone else it may be strength or power, whatever it may be.
So yeah, the kind of the three things that I've speaking to multiple people at this point doing the training. So it's range of motion or mobility, how strong you are, which is kind of like the engine of the car, what it's capable of, and then how explosive can you be? And then all three of those things kind of relate to different exercises where mobility would be like doing the 90-90 hip stuff and thoracic spine. Strength is lifting weights, and explosiveness is like those vertical jumps and rotational force. Is that the basics of it as you see it?
Yeah, I love the car analogy. I think you hit it right on the head with strength. That's how big is your engine. I always think of power as you can have a massive engine, but if you don't know how to drive stick shift, like your transmission sucks, like you're not going to
Well, yeah,
drive that very fast.
you do see, I've been around like massive men who are, I'm only 5'8" and 155. I'm strong for my size. I lift weights, and I can see these massive guys who are a million times stronger than me who can't hit it far because they're not moving their bodies optimally. They're not like
Exactly.
optimizing their strength, but their upside's probably way higher than mine if they got there.
Yes, I call those guys caged gorillas, right? Like
Yeah,
they like
yeah.
if we could if we get if we get the cage off of them, whether and that cage could be they don't have the mobility, let's say hip mobility. You mentioned like 90-90s or thoracic, right? And there's obviously there's like tissue work to unlock, and then there's mobility, like movement, right? Training. There's some guys who actually are great with that. They're super strong. They just have no idea how to move their body, right? And that's where the instructional side comes in of using the ground for, first, shifting weight, right? And I think where we really overlap a lot on the fitness side to the instructional side is being able to have those conversations and identify, hey, is the body the limitation, or is this person just a motor moron in a way where they just don't know how to move, and so we need to help them move better.
So let's try and we'll go through some of these studies that you sent our way. I think the main one that I wanted to start with is kind of like, I think your biggest study, there's hundreds of golfers in there, like what actually correlates with club head speed. I think you did some different measurements with like chest passes and vertical jump by different ages. So walk us through like the basics. It sounds like it's ongoing research you've been doing on like what correlates. It sounds like it's different by age level. I'm assuming, males and females as well.
Yeah, so one of the first studies we started to look at, I think when I got into this space, there was obviously TPI. They have their big assessment that they use. There's lots of other assessment tools out there, right? The challenge that we had is we were working with commercial golf, in a commercial setting, and to do every single test out there would take like 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like nobody's going to pay for that. So it was like, hey, how can we identify the 20% of the tests that account for 80% or more of the impact? And so that's where we came up, in that study in particular, we identified from a power perspective, because power, you hit it on the head, John, when you said like massive humans don't necessarily swing fast. Powerful humans, well, that's going to be what will connect to speed, because club head speed is essentially in my opinion, the only thing that we can directly impact fitness wise. Like I'm not gonna, hey, do squats and you'll hit it more center club face. Like that ain't gonna happen, right? I can make your club go faster, which if you can hit it center face would help ball speed. But that's where we got to really looking at. Initially we started looking at seated chest pass, so sitting in a chair with a medicine ball and launching it as far as you could. Vertical leap, so just standing in place, jumping as high as you could, and then there was a sit up and throw was the other popular one from TPI. When we started looking through all of the data, what we started to see is that all three of them had very high correlations or R values, right? So they were all north of, I believe, like zero point 0.8, right? So very strong correlation. Ultimately, what we care about though is causation, right? Just because somebody's bigger doesn't mean that they're going to hit it farther, although it is correlated that bigger humans tend to hit it farther, right?
So you were measuring this in conjunction with like their club head speed. You
Yes,
were tracking that as well.
exactly. So the entire testing protocol was they would all go through all the mobility testing. At this time, we were doing hip internal rotation, which is rotating into your trail side and then rotating into your lead side and your hips. But we were using goniometers and measuring all that. We were looking at shoulder external rotation, which if you think of like a football player, looked at thoracic rotation, among others. But those ended up being the big three that were predictive of things or correlated to things. And then we looked at strength numbers. So we looked at squat, bench, deadlifts, and pulls or rows. And then the power metrics we looked at were sit up and throw. We did a shot put. So think of holding a medicine ball on one side, doing a shot put. We looked at seated chest pass and vertical leap. So that's kind of like we started with all of those. And then
Mhm.
we basically whittled it down. So on the power side, and then, and we also obviously did club head speeds. So we did gamer speed. So the cueing was, you're on a par five, long par five, you have to keep it in play, but it's a 600-yard par five. So get
Yeah,
it out.
let
And,
it go.
yeah. And then there was like all out, like, hey, we don't care where the ball goes, just how fast can you swing the club? And so that was kind of the initial, we were just like, all right, let's just collect a ton of data and see what shows up. And so that's where we got started to see, initially you could see correlations. So statistically, you'll get the R values. Ultimately, what we care about is causation. And so that's where I think the cool part of our database is, we have some people that have been with us for over 15 years. So we can look at their change data. So we can implement hey, this is where you're testing at. We're going to implement this intervention, and then let's see what happens. And so what we started to see was, in particular, the shot put, the seated chest pass, and the vertical leap, as club head speed went up, all of those tended to go up. But what was interesting is if vertical and chest pass did not go up, club head speed didn't move. So shot put could go up, but if chest pass and vertical didn't also go up, it didn't matter, right? So fast forward 15 years to the point where we are now, I know that if with a 4-pound medicine ball, for every 8 inches you can throw it farther, that's a mile an hour of capability. It should be, right? Assuming that you deliver it with the club correctly. We know that for every just under 4 inches of vertical leap that you can add, we know that that's going to be 6 yards. So like that's where now we have causational where, hey, if we can go up by X amount, we're going to see these types of improvements speed wise.
That's awesome. I've always really wondered that because I know there are things out there like grip strength
That's the one I was
correlates
going to bring up.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
distance, and I'm like, well, yeah, but if you increase grip strength, does it make you hit it farther? It could just be that someone with super strong grip has a super strong body everywhere else, and it's the other
Well, I
things
think
that make them hit it farther.
that's such an important thing to like for the listeners. Like, I think this is becoming marketing. Unfortunately, like stats has become marketing, and people are like, oh, it correlates. Like, who cares? Like, yes, if you have strong grip strength, like, let's like just think about this as like a common sense human being. Higher grip strength probably means you can lift heavier things. So if you lift heavier weights, your grip strength is probably going to go up. Like, and that's where I think then we start looking at our database and we say, well, yeah, for instance, if you can deadlift 1.75 times your body weight, that's kind of the point of diminishing return. Where getting stronger in a deadlift isn't really going to transfer over to club head speed. Like, can it? Sure, but there's probably higher returns on your time investment that are available to you. Like,
Well,
so naturally, if you can deadlift, if you're a 200-pound guy and you can deadlift and hold 300 pounds, your grip strength's probably pretty strong. Is it because your grip is strong, or is it because you've been training and lifting the heavier loads? And I think, I don't know if you guys have seen the stuff with the basically they have quote unquote force plates in the grips now, where they're starting to look at
yeah,
those
we were
sorts of
chatting
things.
about that before you're on the
Yeah,
call because
yeah,
they've got it at they had it at the show.
exactly. So, and like when you look at tour players, they actually are lighter grip pressure usually in the beginning than amateurs. Their peak pressure or pre grip pressure is at that transition. And then, whereas an amateur like locks down at impact, the fastest guy in the world
Yeah.
are actually kind of letting go.
That
Like,
was Liam Mucklow was on our show last year, and that was really interesting hearing that the exact opposite. So I guess the question I have, so with the seated chest pass and the vertical jump, when you saw that, so were you saying like, okay, we need to emphasize this more in our training? What did it look like, when you saw that stuff? Like, how are you changing training programs for golfers based on that?
yeah. So I think, if we go through kind of the history of the studies we did, that was kind of like the first thing that we saw, right? So I think I sent over to you guys like we did. So then we're like, all right, well, let's do another study. So I think we did 6 or 8 weeks on like, we're gonna have one group who or strength, mobility, everything stays the same in terms of these groups. We have 3 groups, I believe, and like one group is going to do like all exercises that work to improve vertical leap and seated chest pass. So basically, push power with the upper body and vertical with the lower body. We're
So
gonna have
that would be like, that wouldn't be them just doing that actual exercise. They'd be doing chest presses and like strengthening their like,
correct,
upper
yeah. So
body.
exactly. So what we looked at doing with that group is like, could you do different variations of explosive pushing? So whether it's a single arm driving a med ball into the ground,
Mhm.
not one that bounces and hits you in the face, but just in case anyone wants to go and try that after listening to this.
I've put a hole in the wall once in my basement with a med ball. I learned
Yes,
that
yes.
lesson the
Don't do
hard
it on
way.
drywall.
I've done it with a golf ball. I was bouncing a golf
I've done
ball on
that
hard
too.
concrete, did that straight in the eye, just
Yeah.
saw this
Oh,
massive lump come
I think
down. It's
I think one of the
horrendous.
funniest messages I've gotten on social is I had somebody someone must have been filming them while they were doing like a slam. And they're like, "Hey, I heard. Thanks so much for the tip." They were being kind of smart about it. They're like, "Now I got a bloody nose." So they were using a rubber ball and they slammed and it came back up and just nailed him in the face.
Ugh.
No.
I was like, "No, you got to use a ball that like a sand ball that hits and doesn't
Yeah,
come back up."
dampens the blow.
Yeah, hilarious video. But anyway, so like yeah, so the training for that group was going to be like jumps, explosive work there, and then obviously explosive pushing stuff. So whether it was repeated, med ball work on the wall or cables, whatever it may be. We compared that to a group who did all rotary stuff. So all the golf stuff, quote unquote, right? That you can see on social media. Look at all these different bands and the rotations and everything that they do. Because that's the idea is that would be what produced power. And then we had kind of a control group who didn't really do either. They just did like a traditional training that we had already been doing, right? So they just kind of kept down the same path. I mean, the results were stupid how much better the vertical and the push group did, particularly compared to the rotary group. And so that was like, it was like, okay, like we're going to continue to do more of that. And, fast forward 5, 6, 7 years, that just continues that, that
Yeah.
whole.
I really wouldn't think that. If you made me guess, I would say the rotation work would have been better, but to hear the verticals
Well,
were
so that was then the other question in my mind. Cause I'm like, all right, there's a lot of smart people in this and they're all doing rotary stuff. So like there has to be some element of rotary that's important. And we had in that time, we had done another study where we had looked at what's called triphasic training. So, looking at squatting and hinging and pressing and pulling. Traditionally, like when people would start, they would do, their first 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 10 or 12 reps and 3 sets, right? So they do higher reps with not as much weight, obviously. And then their next phase, they would drop from 10 or 12 reps to 5 to 8 reps. And then they would go the last phase to where it's maybe only 2 to 3 reps. So each phase, they would do more weight. So it was heavier weight, but they would do it for less repetitions, obviously. The idea being that you're training your body to be more explosive and powerful as you go. There's a triphasic training is same 3 phases, but instead of focusing on like doing a lot of reps, you're actually focusing, if you think of a squat, like the lowering phase of the squat is the eccentric phase. So there's 3 phases of all movements, right? So we actually, you'd focus on like going down for 7 seconds. So it's like incredibly like slow. And then you'd stand up, right? So you're training on your ability to absorb force. And there's lots of literature and research that that's one of the best ways to get hypertrophy or increase just general muscle strength. Then we would transition second phase, you'd go down like normal pace, like normal speed, but then you'd hold it at the bottom 5 to 7 seconds, right? The isometric phase, your ability to maintain that and then exploit it as you would stand up, which is the last phase, which is called concentric. So the third phase was, we call it like a conversion to power phase. So you'd go down like normal, you wouldn't pause, but you would just focus on like exploding up as hard as you could. Bench press, you'd go down and explode up as hard as you could, almost like a velocity based training idea. And the idea that your nervous system in those first 2 phases is kind of moving slow. And so we were like, well, I wouldn't be surprised if speeds dropped, which club head speeds do drop during those 2 phases. But then you get to this third phase and then you'd see the speeds like skyrocket up. And it was interesting that the eccentric side had a massively more valuable return in terms of club head speed gain than traditional training for adults. It was actually flipped with kids, which was weird.
So the lowering phase, like the lowering phase of a bar, of a bench press. But then, so the concentric part, the exploding up, sorry, I'm lost a little with that. That the eccentric had a bigger effect on club speed?
So that combination of those 3 things together, right? So what happens is the eccentric phase is where, I think it was like you're just really building up. You're going to create a lot more muscle damage. You're going to build more musculature. So your strength numbers are going to go up. The isometric, think of it as like, I would say, like, think of it like if somebody puts like a ton of sand in your hands, the more you can hold to like before then you have to like throw it into the air.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's say you get like a pound of sand in your hands. So the bigger your hands are, the more you can store, right, as you're going down. Then the isometric is like, can I hold it before I throw it for a long time without it all falling through my fingers? And then as much as is possibly left is the concentric, where I can throw it up over my head, right? So the eccentric is trying to build a bigger bowl to hold it. The isometric is, can I hold everything without losing it so I don't lose power? And then concentric is, how hard can I explode it all that up and move it forward?
So would it look different if someone is optimizing for speed versus like just general, hey, I just want to protect my body, be able to move well, or they kind of accomplish the same goal? Does it look different based on like the assessment you give a golfer, meaning like, hey, we think you should do more of this speed related stuff versus, okay, let's get you more mobile and just stronger? I don't
That's
know
a
if
great question. So it's
yeah.
actually age dependent. So based on that study, what we saw was kids do better with the first method I was saying, which is more your traditional start high reps, low weight, right? And that's just movement wise, they're just learning how to do the movement and their bodies responded better, particularly for a golfer as it related to club head speed by like 30+% or something. It was something stupid how much better they did there versus the triphasic. Triphasic, I love for 40 plus because number one, if you can imagine, if you have to hold weight for 7 seconds on the way down, it's obviously not going to be as heavy as you could possibly do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's actually a lighter load, but your time under tension is increased and you're going so slow that the ability to learn the form and the technique actually has a injury risk reducing element to it. And we saw for the adults that obviously it produced a much better return on club head speed than anything else we had ever seen before. So if we have an adult coming in, I love triphasic to start with people. Number one, because it helps with the learning curve. Number two, we don't need heavy weight and we can obviously just focus a lot on technique and form. So that first phase, they're moving super slow. And then and then as we get to that third phase, now they're comfortable with the moves and now they're working on progressing to speed. They have a good base. And then that's where we can then kind of move that forward. I'd say it's more obviously training age and how long somebody has been training will impact kind of what we recommend from a strength perspective. But for an adult, if you're a golfer, eccentric training, like statistically, is way better. And then that obviously would lead to, that also applies to rotary, which is what we saw as well.
So would you say, correct me if I'm wrong, but the eccentric phase is like building the capacity, and then the concentric phase is like, okay, can I reach that capacity now?
Correct. Yes. So the eccentric helps to make the engine bigger, right?
Yeah.
The isometrics, making sure we're not leaking anything out of the engine and that we can actually maintain everything we built. And then the concentric is how fast can I explode all that out in the way that I need to.
So the natural question, because this form of training is so popular with swing speed, and another study you did was overspeed training, and you were kind of exploring like, are people just doing literally too much volume, and
Hmm.
is it helping them? So before we get into the findings of that study, like the bottom line is like people don't have endless capacity to lift weights, do mobility, do overspeed training. Like it's a lot to ask someone who is, has a normal career and family obligations to be like, yeah, I want you to do overspeed training on your off days and straight. Like it's just, that's tour player type stuff, or someone who's just like really into fitness.
So honestly, that's hard to get our tour players to do everything
Yeah,
too.
I'm sure because they have other obligations as well, and they got to let their bodies rest at times. So looking back before we get into that, like, is there a preferred method on your end at this point where you say like, hey, we'd like you to do what you just talked about, all the tri phase, all that stuff, versus like you could do the sticks but only do them once or twice a week?
Yeah. So I think ultimately, John, it all comes down to our evaluation. And this at this point, we can profile you pretty quickly. So the simple way to profile yourself would be first thing we want to look at is do you have enough rotary mobility in your hip, your shoulder, and your thoracic spine? And that's going to be, enough is defined based on age, but also how fast you're trying to swing. So think of it as like a pyramid, the old food pyramid that I think they did away with.
It
Yeah,
just got changed massively, I
my
think.
kids came home with some weird plate looking thing.
It's like all steak and milk now, right? Steak
Yeah,
and whole milk.
I don't know. Anyway, we've moved to that apparently. So I'm going to take over the pyramid because it works well for this. Where the bottom part of that pyramid or the foundation of health and speed and all that, everything that we want from golf fitness is mobility and having the ability to move our joints in a way where we're not running into hard end fields or running fast into brick walls where we get hurt, basically. So that's kind of the first place that we always start with guys. And then, what we found is if people can put in 90 minutes a week, so 15 minutes, 6 days a week, like it's enough. We see on average 10 yards in the first 10 weeks, regardless of where you start, right? Some guys may start there. Let's say that looks good. Then the next step is the strength side. So, right, this would be like we're looking at your triphasic. So, and it may be that like your triphasic focus, generally, we just do that kind of on the bigger movements, like a squat movement or a hinge or like slash deadlift movement, a press movement. Like we're not doing it on every single movement, but it may just be that, hey, if you can work out 30 minutes, 3 days a week, great. That's all we're going to take from you. Obviously, if you can put in more, you move faster. But then the third kind of level of that pyramid is in the power side, right? So that's the jumps, the med ball, explosive stuff, cable, explosive stuff. Like that would be kind of that third pyramid or layer to that pyramid. The tip of the pyramid, which I think used to be like dessert, right? that to me, dessert
Still is
is
for me.
still is that is truly speed training. Like in all of our research, we categorize people as of three categories physically. There's a ticking time bomb, which is 93% of every single adult male over 50. There is a
Do
balanced
you
golfer.
do you actually tell people this, or do you have
Oh
like
yeah.
a euphemism for it?
No, no, we tell like, dude, you're a ticking time bomb. Or if they're already hurt, then we're like, you exploded already.
Yeah.
We got to put you back together. And then we have like I call the unicorn is like the more RPMs under the hood guy, right? So I'll start there and work our way back to the more common. The more RPM under the hood guy is, I'll use an example. He was like 35 years old. He played Division I basketball. He's 6'7". He jumps 40 inches out of the gym. He can throw the medicine ball freaking like 50 feet, and he swings a club 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, scratching your head. You're like, dude,
Yeah.
like,
You could be at
and he's
125.
hypermobile like a gymnast. Like, all right, he checks all the bottom of those pyramid. With him, he's somebody where like, hey, let's do like a step change drill, or let's just get you to like figure out how to use your lower body first. And within 5 minutes, like this is what you see on Instagram, it's like, hey, within 5 minutes, guy goes from 100 to 127 miles an
Yeah,
hour.
I know someone like that who is a Division I track athlete who took up golf in his 30s, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, try the sticks out. And he's like, yeah, like 2 weeks later, he's like, oh my god, I'm at 118. I'm like,
Yeah.
ugh, of course.
It's like, you suck,
Yeah.
man.
I'm like, it
I've
took
had a
me
those are
20
4
guys
mile an
that
years.
hour increase with someone as well. 20 mile an hour. I just asked them, just can you swing faster? He's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
All right, let's talk about the
Okay, then,
ticking
let's do
time
that.
bomb then. What do
Yeah.
they do?
So the
That's
ticking
me.
time bomb is somebody who either doesn't pass any, like all the mobility tests, so they have a restriction mobility wise, which that will ultimately limit their ability, like limit their on ramp. So I think ultimately what that's going to limit is, you know, their ability to produce impulse. So the amount of time that they're going to be able to produce the force. So that's, you can accelerate faster on a 100-yard on ramp than you can on a 10-foot on ramp, right? So that's going to be the first one. The second is that they swing faster than what their body can handle based on all of our data. So we'll look and say, hey, your club head speed's 75th percentile for your age, but your power is 20th percentile. So when that number gets beyond 15% away, that would also, so somebody who passes mobility but has that kind of a gap would fall into a ticking time bomb, or somebody who fails mobility. Those are majority, since it's 93% of guys over 50. Those are the guys that are going for all these speed tricks. So they're skipping the bottom parts of the pyramid and jumping right to dessert.
Got it. So people are getting ahead of themselves and asking their body to do something that it's not
Yeah.
capable of.
I mean, basically they're already, 50% away, like faster than what their body can handle. And now we go do speed training to get even faster. So we widen the injury gap, and then we scratch our heads and we blame it on the stick companies. Or like, oh, speed training sucks. Like, well, no, it's just it's good for the right person at the right time, and unfortunately, most people are not the right person.
So you found in your study that lower volume was actually a better outcome for people.
Mhm.
So, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this was back 2017, 2018, um, when some of the companies, I won't mention any names, but some of the companies, the protocols at that point were doing 100 rep protocols. So they were
Per week or per session?
per session.
Per session.
Wow.
I've done them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it could take
Jeez.
30
You'd be on
minutes.
your knees, then you'd be, stand. I mean, it was like, and then you'd step into it and you were doing on each side. Right. And so coming from the sport performance background that I do, like, can you think of 100, like the Olympics are coming up, right? Can you think of a 100-meter sprinter doing 100 meters in a training session 3 times a week? Like, that's like utterly ridiculous. Like, you would never do that. Right. So, anyway, so I looked at that. And so I was like, I wonder what would happen if we did a third of the volume. And so that's what we basically did, is we did, hey, we're only going to do a third of the volume. And the other thing that a lot of the protocols didn't respect was the glycolytic recovery. Like you're going to go as hard as you can. That energy system, it like gets exhausted really quickly, and it takes a minimum 5-6 to 1. So if you work out for 10 seconds hard, you got to rest minimum a minute, right? So that's where we implemented, after each set of 5 swings, you'd rest 2 minutes. And so when we did that, what we ended up seeing, we did, there was, and we also did like a light stick, overly heavy stick, kind of one that was more along the lines of the driver. So we also looked at weights as well within this. TLDR, there was no statistical difference if you did one stick for a third of the protocol versus all 3 and getting 100 reps per set.
Which is kind of good news, meaning like more rest, less reps,
Yeah,
you get the
100%.
same result.
Yeah, well, and this was also the other thing that stoked this, is I was getting a lot of people coming in that had gotten hurt doing speed training, and
What kind of injuries were you
a
seeing
lot of
out of
wrists,
curiosity?
elbows,
Elbows?
yeah, and then we get some backs as well too, but definitely a lot of wrists and elbows, particularly when you're doing dry swings. Like at this point for us, if somebody's over 120, like we work with most of the long drive guys, none of them do drive swings. Like they all hit golf balls for speed training to get, because if you're swinging north of 120 with a dry swing, there's no decel. So we see a lot of injuries at that speed.
So that's a conversation. I was at the PGA show last week and talking with someone who I respect on
Yeah.
speed training and his and again, like I realize people listening to this, like there are so many different opinions, right? People come at it from different angles. And his belief to me was like, because I told him I had elbow issues that have been persistent for several years. And he's like, I just don't like swinging hard without making contact with something or having some type of resistance going on. That was just his belief. He's like, I think that's a recipe for an injury eventually.
I can tell you it is just from experience and having to fix them all.
Now, what's the more important part? How do you fix it? I've been trying for 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, elbow, like number one is figuring out what's causing it. All right. So the
Yeah.
elbow issue means any injury is going to be the symptom.
Yeah.
But
I don't know what caused it. I think
yeah,
it's a
this could be a whole
combination
nother,
of things. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's
whole nother
probably
conversation.
too much weight, too much of that,
Yeah.
millions
Well,
of
I
golf
think
balls over 25 years.
yeah. Well, I think also if you're talking about like elbow issues in particular, the first thing that the number one cause of elbow issues is going to be not having enough shoulder external rotation. So failing the shoulder rotary test on the same
Mhm.
side, or failing the hip rotation test. Like which elbow is it for you?
My right, I have
You're right-handed player?
tendinopathy. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I've now developed golfer's elbow on my left.
got it. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what your hip rotation is, but
It's not bad. I mean, I'm fairly mobile, but yeah, this has been, I don't want to turn it into the John's elbow show. Adam's having issues too, but like I'm at a point where I'm like considering surgery in the next year or two.
yeah,
We'll
but
see.
this is where the first thing I would look at was, and we can do this afterwards too, is like look at your actual hip internal rotation on your left side. Because if that's south of 45, that's the number one cause of elbow issues that we see,
Mm,
is that no matter what you do to that elbow, if you're always running into a block on your lead like hip, you're going to
mhm.
have to overuse the elbows and wrists to create the rotary movement. So you're automatically increasing stress on the elbows.
Yeah.
And then obviously the rehab stuff, then you can do needling, you can do eccentric work.
I've done it all. And I've gotten messages from so many people from the show who've had like, it's amazing what everyone's trying to be helpful, but like there's just, you can go down a whole rabbit hole with this
Yeah.
stuff. So
But
anyway, we'll
but
table
to,
that for another.
but to answer your question on the reason why hitting a golf ball doesn't hurt these guys is because when you hit the golf ball, it actually decelerates the club.
Yeah.
And
There's a
and
deflection.
ultimately, yeah. And ultimately my opinion has changed, I think, over the last 5 years working with more of these super high speed guys, is ultimately what we care about is ball speed. Like club
Yeah.
head
Yeah.
speed's important, but like
Yep.
the truly, I think respecting the speed is a skill. Yes, you can build a big engine and you can go fast, but to me, you start getting close, like 115, 120, like just when you're playing,
Mhm.
you probably should be doing speed training in respect to not necessarily club head speed, but to ball speed. And can you hit center club while you're going all out? And ultimately, that's going to be what transitions to the course.
Okay. So it sounds like you're not against the overspeed training in general. It's just the context of it needs to be appropriate for the player and where they
Yeah,
are
and
and kind of their.
the majority of people that like, if you're an amateur golfer, the majority of you should not likely, like, there's probably lower hanging fruit that is safer than swinging dry swings with different systems that are out there. I will say, just I don't get paid by Sasha or Stack, but his system, in my opinion, is the most intelligent out there, and that it will use algorithmic adjustments for you. So if you are going to
Mhm.
do one, just that's what I recommend to our clients. Like I said, I do need to talk to him about getting paid for that, but uh,
Well, we've had Sasha on the show a couple of
yeah, I
times. I
love
saw him last
Sasha's a
week.
good dude.
So
I love
I'll,
him.
I'll,
He's super smart.
wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, but I think the majority of people, if we're talking about overspeed training, are going to get so much more benefit by getting mobile first, strong enough, and then once you
Yeah.
know where you're at,
Yeah.
100%, there's a time to do that. I
Mhm.
think unfortunately we just try to jump to that first.
And you found that 30 times a week was just as effective, or 30 times
But yeah,
twice a week was as effective as 100 times.
we did a follow-up study because I was like, this is a big claim that I would be making. So we did a follow-up study with little larger groups as well, and we found the same exact thing statistically. there was no difference whatsoever in terms of club head speed gains doing just one stick 30 times, 3 times a week. So and thankfully at this point, all the protocols that I see out there now are lower volume, particularly in the beginning, and they ramp people up. So at the very least, hopefully less people are getting hurt just because of that.
Yeah, and where do you stand on so like Mike Carroll has always had a piece of advice where he's just like, hey, at the end of your driving range session, take like 5 or 10 swings with your driver and hit a ball and just go crazy with it. Like when you're obviously fully warmed up where you're hitting the golf ball. Like, yeah, he's obviously a proponent of all the things we've discussed as well. But do you like that? I mean, it sounds like you would because you're hitting a golf ball.
Yeah, and I love Mike. I've had him on our podcast a number of times, and him and I are definitely aligned on pretty much everything. I think the one asterisk, I guess I would say, is if you're gonna do speed training,
Mhm.
do speed training. Like
Yeah.
like if you're gonna wait to the end, and that's may just come down to you don't have time to have like a speed day.
Yep.
Which,
Yeah.
in which case, what Mike is saying, go ahead, do it. But like what we recommend to our guys is take out like a PRGR or a stack rate or, one of the something that just gets club speed, ball speed. And then you swing as hard as you can and you see what the number is. Let's say and you pick a metric, right? Whether it's ball speed or club speed that you're trying to beat. Let's say you're doing club head speed. So you say you swing 100 miles an hour. Well, now you have 3 swings to beat 100 miles an hour. And then, if you don't beat it, you got to rest 2 minutes before you get to play again. If you do beat it, then you refresh and get another 3 swings to beat the new high, right? And that's your new mark. I will say I do find that is easier for a lot of guys to do in a simulator where they can only put up on the screen the ball speed, so they literally can't see where the ball goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
There definitely are some mental issues that we have as golfers of like, yes, I broke my speed, but it went in the woods. Like you have to let that go. And I think that is a hard
Yeah.
thing to see.
You know who did a good job of this recently? I'll give a shout out to them. SkyTrack released a new version of their launch monitor, and one of
But,
the
yeah.
yeah, so they have a speed training mode now where you can kind of like what the PRGR does. It'll just measure your swing speed independent of hitting a ball. But then they also have that mode where you can just focus on ball speed or whatever. And it's I think something that most launch monitor companies should think about kind of programming in. I think that's a really good.
100%. We do in-person events once a month. We'll have 10 to 20 kind of people fly in. And one of the segments we do is we take them through proper speed training. And so we'll put up on the sims just the one number. We're blasting music. Basically, it's basically like they're in a long drive speed training session.
Yeah, yeah.
And these are like we got 78-year-old guys wearing bandanas. Their teams. They're going.
I love it.
They're going against each other to see if they can gain the most relative to where they started as teams. That by far and away, though, John, is the number one thing that I see with these guys is like there's no swing tip. It's like, dude, just go hard. Like,
Move. Yeah,
yeah, it's
move.
like take it back fast and go. Like
Yeah.
you just got to take their minds off of it and then get them to the point. Like if they put an idiot mark on it, but their club head speed was a PR, we're slapping high fives and they're like totally confused. You're like, no, that's the point. The whole goal of this was more club head speed. Now that you get more club head speed, now you can work on hitting the side of the face because obviously you need that for golf. But it is such a big mental barrier that a lot of golfers need to break down.
So if someone asked you, they're like, hey, I don't want to go through evaluations. I don't want to do different phases. Like, I just want to cover the basics. Like, so the basic, I'll tell you what I do after I've learned everything. And maybe it's not as much as I could be doing, like specific to speed, but like, I just wake up and do like 10 minutes of mobility. I do 3 full body strength workouts a week. I actually started doing Pilates I have a tonal machine that I love.
Yeah, sure.
And they added Pilates to it. So I've been doing some Pilates, which I've been kind of enjoying just to kind of mix things up. But like, and then I'll just kind of go crazy on my simulator trying to swing really hard. Like and I've done it all. I've done stack, super speed golf, but I don't I think for a while I was going way too heavy and way too fast. And my belief is that's where the elbow stuff started showing up. I don't know for sure.
Yeah. So I think, I get questions like this a lot. I think it sounds like you're doing a lot of the right stuff. My first place I would look is I would want to measure what is the actual mobility that you have in the hips, the spine, and the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And if those are all great, what you're doing just to maintain it a little bit on each is perfect. But if your shoulders and your T-spine are good and your hips stink, well, maybe, 10 of those 15 minutes is hip.
Got
So
it.
it may just be tweaking.
So just a little more customized. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to maintain, like I built up to maybe 108, 110 miles an hour. And I've pretty much like stayed there doing this stuff. I haven't declined.
So that's where then to me, this is like a guy like you is like super fun because now I'm going to start to look at and say, all right, he's got a base, right? He's been doing a lot of the right things. Well, let's look at how he moves. So one of the things we haven't talked about that we haven't published this, but we started really looking deeply into what's called elastic utilization ratio. And so the early test we looked at just like, a vertical leap, you'd start by standing up, you dip down and you jump up as high as you can. Now we have force plates now and multiple sets. And we've started looking at, obviously it's not how high you jump, it's the amount of force you can produce that actually is the closer relationship or causational relationship to speed. But the other interesting thing we've seen, particularly in adults, is looking, honestly, we have a kid, he's playing at Carolina who he falls into like a 60-year-old category for this is we also look at what's called static, like a static leap, right? So you would squat down like you're at the bottom of your dip before you're going to jump and you hold it there for like 5 seconds. And then you just immediately jump straight up. There's no dip. So there's no elastic stretch that occurs. It's from like almost if you were sitting in a chair and you just got to stand and jump. And so when you look at the difference of those, what you're getting is how the static is saying if all you can do is use your strength because you don't have any elasticity to use, no rubber band effect, how high do you go? How much force do you produce? And then let's look when you're standing up and you can have an elastic effect. Like theoretically, you should go an efficient athlete, you should go higher. What we see with a lot of adults is that ratio is like 1 to 1 or even negative, where the
Yep.
static is higher than the elastic. We have a kid, he'll play on tour. He's at Carolina right now. Since he was 16, his EUR was negative. He just naturally is a really strong kid and he gets his speed from his strength. He does not get it from elasticity. So we've had to over index elasticity, plyometric, those stats to sort of work for him to try to continue to get him to go faster. So that's where like for you, I'd look and say, all right, what can you deadlift? What can you bench? What can you squat? And if you're hitting those metrics to me where it's like, all right, you're pretty much at the ideal numbers of where getting more isn't going to get you like that much more speed. I'm going to look at obviously your chest pass. I'm going to look at your vertical, and then I'm going to particularly look at your elastic utilization ratios in those arenas. And probably your training starts to look a little bit more dialed where maybe instead of 3 days total body strength, let's say your elastic utilization ratio isn't any good. Let's say you're not very elastic. Well, then maybe 2 of those days, like 60% of the time, I may have more elastic elements, or we may do like French contrast training, right? Where we'll do a squat and then immediately go into a resisted band, like broad jump or some sort of, depth drop to a jump or box jump, right? Or some sort of plyometric element in it to see if we can get your elastic utilization rate. So that's where it starts to get really intricate is looking at if all of your stuff is pretty good, then to me, that's where all like the fun stuff that you see on social and what kind of becomes important. But unfortunately, most people just start with dessert.
So so it sounds like you're obviously a big proponent of dialing it in and being customized versus like, okay, here, I mean, again, let's say someone doesn't want to do that. You said like, you got 90 minutes a week, like
Yeah. Just do
lift weights, like what is it?
yeah.
Lift weights and
Like
mobility?
truly what will help 90% of people over the age of 50. Or, I mean, shoot, over the age of 30.
Yeah, let's go. I mean, yeah, most people are
Yeah.
sitting all day long, so they're
Like
declining
literally
earlier.
do mobility work on your hips, your shoulders, and your T-spine for, I mean, even do 5 minutes a day. And then like pick one a day. Just alternate between those three. And then squat, deadlift, or hinge if you don't want to deadlift. You obviously hex bar is it. We've also found hex bar squatting is a little bit more highly correlated to club head speed than deadlifting. So squat, we've definitely prioritized kind of a squat. Hex bar is a great tool that's safer than a barbell because most people have crappy form, and they say that deadlifts are the spawn of Satan. In
I
reality,
love honestly, it's become my favorite
yeah.
exercise. And I was a guy who skipped leg day for over a
Oh
decade, and
yeah,
I love
it's
doing
phenomenal.
RDLs and
Yeah,
neutral deadlifts.
yeah.
Like I love it.
It's phenomenal. So the fact of the matter is most people do it wrong and then they blame it and say it's a bad exercise. But in reality,
Well,
they
I
just
definitely like in the beginning, I wasn't, you know,
yeah, you
doing
get
it
your back.
properly. I was hurting my lower back
Yeah,
more than,
exactly.
but I think it's helped my lower back now.
It will, yeah, especially if you do it correctly. But so I mean, if I was just saying this to the average Joe out there, 5 minutes a day of mobility, rotate between your shoulders, your T-spine, and your hip, and specifically external rotation in the shoulder and internal rotation in the hip. Then I would say pick one day, do some squats. Another day, do some hinges. For safety, I would use a hex bar, but a hinge. Then do a press movement, like a bench press or something along those lines. And then I would do a row movement, like a seated row or something like those. Like that would be it. If that's
Yeah,
all
right.
you did, that will
Yeah,
help 90% of people.
yeah,
Your case, you've been doing all that already. That's where I'm like, all right, well, I mean, if we're truly going to see 115, we're going to have to get a little bit more specific and see exactly what you're doing and how do we kind of break through that 108 to 110 plateau to the next.
yeah. I've been hesitant just because of the
Sure.
pain, right?
Sure.
Like I moved back on the weight because I started trying to squat and deadlift as much as I can. I felt it in my elbow, like trying to deadlift a ton of weight. Like I'm like it's tearing on my elbow. So I'm like, I'm just gonna back off.
Yeah. Number one rule in the gym is do no harm.
Don't, yeah,
Miss no
exactly. So
rounds.
yeah, I've been like in a more of a static mode the last few years and just holding on to what I've got. But yeah, I think if I'm being critical, like yeah, the jump, the other stuff could be. I've ignored that because I'm kind of a creature of habit. I'm like, I'm just gonna do my 3 full strength workouts a week and I'll be fine. Like
Yeah, I
that's
mean, the
just kind of
simple
kept me
thing
going.
for someone like you is I would say, like, you're somebody who's been lifting for a long time. Just throw in, if you're doing a squat, throw in a jump activity like
Yeah,
within 30 seconds afterwards and do 5 to 6 reps of it. And if you're doing a press, like one of my easiest things like that I'll do is I'll do a set of bench. I'll take a 6 pound medicine ball. I'll lay on my back with my arms all the way out on the ground. I just toss it up like 18 inches. So then I have to kind of catch it. I'll catch it down to my chest and then I try to explode it up and hit the ceiling. Right. So there's a elastic element to that where I'm working on speed.
got it.
So yeah. So that's the piece that sounds like could be added for you.
What are the dose response curves looking like in terms of, if you did an hour of training a week versus 2 versus 3 versus 10, is there a point where it's like what yeah, do you talk
Yeah,
through
so I
that?
think what we have found is that 90 minutes in a week, so like we guarantee everything we do with all of our clients. And I think the guarantee, and that's when tracking everything, it's 90 minutes is kind of the minimum that we require. That reason it's 90 is that probably leaves 20 minutes of human error and laziness of not doing anything. So it's probably more like 70 minutes.
Yeah,
But that obviously is just also we're telling them to do exactly what is the lowest possible hanging fruit, and think of theory of constraint, right? We're going to attack what is the one thing, the one domino, if we knock this down, that makes everything else easier. And that's where we start in that 90 minutes. And then from there, we go to the next and the next, right? So now all of a sudden mobility is good. Cool. The next constraint is strength. So we're starting to work more on that. If you can get to 2, 3 hours, I would say if you get to 5 hours a week, going north of there, there's probably a diminished
five
dose.
hours is a lot. That's a ton.
That would be a lot. So that'd be like,
Yeah,
I'd say like 3 1-hour strength workouts in a week. And then you're probably
yeah.
doing like 20 minutes of mobility every day. Like that would be excessive. I don't say that'd be excessive. There's some people that need to do it, but if you love working out, sure, go ahead and do it. But I would say the guys who get the biggest gains that we see as golfers who are doing like enough total for the week, I'd say once you get to 3 hours, we're kind of like anything else you're doing is just because you like it.
Yeah, which I mean, that's one of the reasons I want to have you on, just to like kind of reinforce that message is like it is unbelievable what you can achieve in 90 minutes a week if you kind of stuck with it and you had the right plan.
Yeah, and I think that's just a matter of we have a home assessment we use that we give to people for free. All of our clients, like we literally will say, all right, these are the 5 tests. Like if we don't, like, so we have a number of people who may not come in once a month, and we'll say, all right, in 2 weeks, just retest yourself and make sure that you haven't gone back or it's staying the same. Or like guys go on golf trips,
Yep.
right? And it's like, dude, just when you wake up in the morning,
Ticking time bomb golf trips.
a lot of
Like I'm going to go
explosion,
play 10 days in a row after not playing for 3 months. It's
a lot
going
of
to destroy
exploding
my
under it.
back.
Yeah, but like those are like it's even like, hey, when you wake up, just test your hip quick. And if it's not at X point that we've determined is good for you, roll out and do 5 minutes to get it where you need it, so you're good for the day. It's just learning a lot of those little things and learning your body because, John, it may be your hip, Adam, it may be your shoulder is your thing. Everybody has their little unique thing, but for me, it's the biggest I think win for me is every guy who can come in or girl is like, I know my body now, like that they feel empowered that they know what their body needs to continue to stay healthy and play.
How do you
And
improve
actually,
flexibility?
oh, go ahead, Adam.
How do you improve flexibility? Is it as logical and as obvious as just push yourself into that range of motion and push it a little bit more? Are there tricks?
Yeah. So interesting research around this is, so they did some studies on, like, a lot of people say, oh, if you're, let's say you can't touch your toes, for example, right? That's just one that everybody knows. They'll say, hey, you gotta stretch, right? So the classic way we would do that is hold, bend down, try to touch your toes, hold it for 30 seconds, right? And you're like, all right, I do that 3 times, I should be able to touch my toes. The fact of the matter is, when you look at the actual fibers of muscle, the actin and myosin fibers, they did studies with contracture research to actually see those lengthen. Because the idea is like, hey, my hamstrings are only 18 inches and they need to be 20 inches. So I'm going to hold them and they'll get longer. It takes you have to hold stretch for a minimum of 5 minutes for, like, at the fiber level, for that stuff to actually get any sort of length to it. Nobody's holding stretches for 5 minutes. So where we see the improvements is, generally speaking, it's myofascial work, or like, basically I'll call it brain work. Think of myofascial as very simple. If you think of, like, think of your arm as as a muscle, say your hamstring or whatever, any muscle in your body. Think of your sleeve on the arm as the fascia. If I raise my arm up, the sleeve will naturally slide down. Unfortunately, what happens as we get older is we'll develop, I call it, like, duct tape. That's my non-technical term, but everyone understands it. Consider, like, you grab the bottom of your sleeve and you hold it to your chest. Now all of a sudden you can't raise your arm. There's nothing wrong with your arm. It's just the relationship between the sleeve and the arm is no longer allowing the arm to move anymore. So all we have to do is remove my other hand from my sleeve, and all of a sudden, magically, my arm goes back up. So how we'll see, like, big improvements in mobility, like, immediately, is through that sort of a thing. So you can use lacrosse balls or softballs or Theracanes or somebody's thumb or their elbow. Like, we have somebody come in here, we'll pin and strip. So we'll pin the restriction and strip, move their arm through, and we're pinning kind of the fascia, basically, quote unquote, ripping the duct tape off. And then magically, all of a sudden, they pick up 10 degrees, right? So, like, when we have our events here, the average person in an hour of a mobility course that we go through, like a class, when we test them afterwards, has gained at least 5 degrees of motion in every single joint, right? And that's not because we stretched the muscle. That's because we ripped off a lot of duct tape that they were stuck with.
What's the retention on that over time?
So think of that as, like, step one. That's a nervous system change. Step two is then you need to actively use that motion now that you've unlocked it, so your brain doesn't try to relock it up. So think of it as like golf, right? If you don't practice chipping, you will not be as good at chipping as you were when you were practicing, right? Your brain kind of forgets it. It's a skill. Movement is a skill too. If you're not using a certain movement, your brain is trained to say, hey, what's the least amount of work I can do to keep, Chris, like, upright? And if he's not going to use that motion, well, then I'm not going to give it to him. I'll just restrict it. Then I don't have to be as strong to control the whole motion. So it actually starts to beget weakness that starts to happen. So think of it as, the first step is you got to get the tissue relationship cleaned up so you can actually move through the motion. Second is you have to actually actively use that motion and move through it. So this would be like a 90-90 that you mentioned, John. It is a great, think of, like, if I was going to release my TFLs and my glutes with a lacrosse ball to clean up the tissue restrictions. Then I did a 90-90 where I'm kind of moving my hips back and forth to move through it. That's kind of step two. Step three is now you want to load it or move fast through it. So now you may train, like, a squat, which requires internal rotation to get to the bottom of squat. You may train, like, a med ball throw, posting on your left leg to internally rotate all the way into your lead side with velocity, right? And focusing on clearing into that hip. So it's kind of a 3-step process. I think where a lot of people get stuck is they just roll and they don't do the other stuff. And so they just end up chasing their tail. Now, the other fashion is, if it's not a tissue problem, it can be a movement problem. So a lot of people who can't touch their toes, it's simply because if you go stand up against a wall, put your heels on the wall, your butt on the wall, try to keep your heels there and try to touch your toes. What's going to happen is you're not going to go very far because you'll fall flat on your face. So your brain is going to say, like, Adam, you're going to fall on your face. So it's going to restrict you from moving. So it will tighten the hamstring, right? This is why you'll have women who can palm the floor, like, with their knees totally straight, be like, oh, my hamstrings feel so tight. It's because their brain's like, oh my God, like, either you're too weak to control that motion, or it kind of feels like it's falling forward, as opposed to, John, you mentioned you've gotten much better at deadlifting. Can you imagine deadlifting with your feet on the wall, on, like, heels on a wall?
Hmm. Well,
No,
no, you
because
can't press your butt back.
correct. And that's what allows you to go down. That's what a lot of people don't think about is to touch your toes, you have to push your butt backwards. So we'll actually do drills with people. We'll say, hey, stand a foot away from the wall. So your heels are like 12 inches in front of the wall. And just keep your knees straight and sit back till your butt hits the wall. And just get the feel of what that feels like. And we'll have guys it happens every month. Guys come in, I haven't touched my toes in 30 years.
It really is unbelievable. Like when I've been doing deadlifts for 6, 7 years now. And like, I used to wake up in my 30s, like couldn't put my socks on in the morning. I was so
Yeah.
tight. Now it's like, no,
Yeah. Well, because now you've trained your body to move. So all of a sudden now the hamstrings don't feel like they have to contract to save you from falling over. And
yeah,
you've gotten stronger. So now and to me, that's like the save button. When you get strong through that range of motion, now your body can control it. It's amazing how much less mobility you actually have to do because you can maintain and control it.
yeah. Let's talk about injuries. We'll let you go in a bit, but you clearly will get a ton of people coming to you in pain, and a lot of rehab is kind of what we've been talking about is like getting more mobile and stronger. Walk us through like what are the most common injuries golfers are coming to you with, and then what does if someone comes to you and says like, "Hey, I've got a problem area," like what does it look like? Give me an example of what that might look like for someone. Is it any different?
No, so I think the number one thing that if people take nothing else away from this, talking about pain, wherever you're hurting, 99% of the time isn't the problem, right?
Yeah,
Unless you like,
something else caused it.
correct. Unless you like hit a root and you fractured your wrist, like
Yeah,
your wrist pain is not because your wrist is a problem. It's going to be because something else is not doing what it's supposed to and the wrist is taking on the load, right? The most common injury in golf is back. So particularly the low back. And so I think when you start to think about how that happens, the number one limitation that golfers have is no hip motion. And if so, a joint is supposed to move and it doesn't, then the joint above or below needs to kind of take on that motion. So the low back is right above the most commonly restricted area.
the hips.
Yeah, the hips are the most restricted. And it's not happenstance that the back is the most commonly injured, right? Because the back ends up trying to take on all the extra work that the hips and or the shoulders are not doing. So I think when we have somebody that comes in, the three most common are going to be back issues, elbow issues, wrist issues. I'd say kind of like second tier is going to be shoulders, hips, and knees. Those are probably the two main categories. You always get random stuff otherwise, but those are definitely back, shoulders, and wrists are definitely the most common. And so I think when we see that when somebody comes in, the evaluation that we go through honestly is no different than if you were healthy in the beginning. I want to know how well do you rotate? If you don't rotate, where? I want to know how strong are you? What can you do without pain? I think the one difference is then we'll start to look at like joint specific. Like, so if you're talking about your elbow, I'm going to want to know, is it inside or outside? Is it from the flexor carpi ulnaris? Is there pressure there? Is it coming from the radialis? Is it from supinator or pronator? Like, we're going to stress all these others to try to figure out which muscle in particular is causing the problem. But that's just the symptom muscle, right? So obviously in the pain situation, you have to address and fix the symptom so that this would say it's your elbow, so that your elbow feels better. But I also know that elbow will never get better if we don't address maybe the hip that isn't moving. And that's what's causing the extra stress on the elbow in the first place. I think that's unfortunately where a lot of golfers kind of get screwed is they'll go to the doc or the physio and I have an elbow pain or back pain and injection. The joke is you go the first time, they'll give you Advil, tell you to rest 2 weeks, maybe PT, right? You go the second time, they'll give you an injection. You go the third time, then they'll cut you. But you got to go 3 times before they'll cut you. But unfortunately, none of them are looking at like just the way the insurance world works. Like if you go for elbow pain, you go to PT for elbow pain, technically they can't bill you if they treat another body part. Like they can only treat your elbow. But the reality is 90% of the time, 99% of the time, the elbow is just a symptom. The problem's coming from somewhere else. And so that's kind of the challenge that I think a lot of people run into is they'll symptom treat and not necessarily problem treat. So yes, you got to get rid of the symptom, but if you're not addressing the problem and ultimately what's causing it, you're going to kind of chase your tail a little, unfortunately,
Just like the golf swing.
just like the golf swing. There's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, after all of my searching, I'm still not sure what the root cause is. I've done all the right
When we
rehab.
hop up, we're going to look at your
Yeah.
hips. I'm just curious. You've got me curious now at this point, but
Okay.
the number of people that have come into me like, "Oh, I've seen 20 doctors. I've seen like, I'm never going to be able to be pain free." And then you look at like, in my mind is like simple stuff of like, well, let's look at hip rotation. How is it? Like I had a college golfer who came in. She had not played for 7 months. Or at this point, she was a high schooler. So she's 18. She's going to top Division I ACC school. She has not played for 8 months. She's got like terrible back pain. She's seen four docs, two surgeons. She's scheduled for surgery like in 2 weeks. And she happened to know somebody that I worked with. She came, they're friends. She was in town they were driving through for vacation or something. So she comes in, and literally all it was her psoas muscle was so locked down, which is a muscle that goes from the inner thigh kind of up along, like under her belly button. It's the number one strongest hip flexor. It's also a hip internal rotator. Shockingly, it was on her lead side. She's a right-handed golfer. It's on her left side. She swings at 18 and like 5'6", 110. She swings 110. Shockingly, like her muscle seized up because she wasn't strong enough, right? So literally we just released the psoas. She stands up and she's like, in 10 minutes, I can swing pain free. It's like, cool. Well, that's what was causing the pain, like symptomatically, but that's not what's going to fix it. Like that's going to come back and tighten back up if you just go start swinging again. The good news is now I know I can fix your pain. Now we got to fix everything of why that seized up, and you got to get stronger. And right? I think that's unfortunate. A lot of people be like, they stand up off the table and are like, oh, my pain's gone. I'm fixed. And then they end up being back 4 weeks later because they get hurt again because they didn't actually fix it. But a lot of stuff can really be that simple.
So where do you think, if you've been doing this, you said, for well over a decade, and obviously a lot has changed, like what's your prediction for like the next 5 or 10 years? Is it more of this personalized type care in golf fitness? Like what would you like to see happen?
Yeah, I think what I would love to see, particularly with where AI is coming, and I didn't see any of this. You're starting to see, you saw it a lot at the show, the PGA show recently, where there was like the AI in the like swing bays and those sorts of things. But I would love to see it coming where, it's in the fitness world where we're using AI to do evaluations, where we're, and measurements of these things, where we're using kind of the human and the coach. Say, hey, these are the parameters that we're looking for. Can you give me the most accurate measurements? Help me profile and basically help to make the coaches more efficient. I don't think AI will replace the coaches, but I think it will make coaches much more accurate, much more consistent. And that feedback loop back to the golfers is just going to get exponentially quicker.
It seems like, I mean, the technology is there to pick up 3D motions with a basic cell
Yeah.
phone camera at this point.
Yeah, we're just waiting there hasn't been that one singular platform that's put it all together. You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
certainly piece it all together. There's measurement tools out there that can measure how far your hip moves or your shoulder moves, right? But there's not a tool out there that has put it all together that takes that, puts it into an algorithmic based on a database, and then says, hey, based on this would be what's recommended, and then kind of let's go from there and adjust. But it's coming.
Investors, possibly you, get
Let's say
prestige
I've got the
worldwide on it.
roadmap. I've got the roadmap built out, just waiting for there to be a platform or a way that we can do it. Because I mean, it's the technology. To your point, is there. It's just fractured. Just having all the playing in AI that I have done and trying to build agents and those sorts of things, and it's just not efficient enough yet. But I mean, it's certainly there. It's been there where you could think of like you're in your home. You put your phone up with your workout, and you're gonna get immediate like feedback. I mean, the tonal, all of these, they're
Yeah,
all
I
right.
tried it on the Tonal, released it like a
Yeah,
year ago. I tried it. I was like,
it's
this
still
is
too
not
early,
gonna,
right?
yeah,
Peloton's
it
doing it
wasn't,
right now.
it was annoying. I turned
Yeah,
it off.
it's like, hey, get a little deeper, or you're leaning too far left, or come
Yeah.
back right. Like that's coming, and it's going to be incredibly accurate. The key is going to be how annoying is it, and the second it's inaccurate, like people are going to stop using it. So it has to be a good enough quality where it's not annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the problem. Any product, training aid, whatever, is like, if it's not properly designed, people give up in like under 2 minutes. They're like, I'm out.
Right.
You've only got one chance to get them.
Right. But that to me, like the consumer, while they are going to get annoyed, think about if you can take that feedback, bundle it, and send it back to the coach because you're doing the workout, let's say asynchronously.
Yeah.
And that coach gets that immediate feedback of, hey, on their squats, they're leaning
Yeah, that
five
would be interesting
more
if you
left.
were just like recording all of your workouts in the background and it's kind of summarizing everything and sending a report to the coach that's like, obviously summarized and quick that they could see it.
Now that's actionable data that the coach can use to help you in your next coaching session, and they have all the like those are the things, ways that I think are going to really kind of be used in the
All right, well,
future.
whoever's listening who wants to build that app, perhaps it's a business opportunity.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know. I got the plan all built out.
Awesome. Was there anything like I know we covered some of the studies. Is there any other major points you want to hit on this? Have we kind of gone over, the basics of your kind of philosophy?
I think we've covered everything. I think the only other cool thing that we didn't get to from one of the studies was the eccentric. We talked obviously about the triphasic.
Yes.
That led into we did another study on eccentric rotary loading, which to me, I still think that's one of the most under recognized findings that we've had, even like with my own team. Where I'm like, guys, use the flywheel more. So if you've, I don't know if you've heard of a flywheel, but basically,
Yeah, yeah, I've seen them.
okay, yeah. So basically, the harder you pull it, the harder it pulls back. So it was
Yeah.
initially came out for like astronauts for loading and everything in the 50s when they were up in space and zero gravity, so they could kind of get resistance even though they didn't have gravity. So what we found is because that has an eccentric overload, we hypothesized that, well, I wonder if we use that because we had done that other study where rotary with bands and cables kind of didn't do anything. It was much better to do vertical leap and chest passes, like pushing power. So, well, I wonder if we overloaded instead of concentric, like a typical cable machine, if you said it's 20 pounds, it's 20 pounds the whole time, right? When you pull it out and when you rotate it back, if you do a chop, whatever. With an eccentric flywheel, if you pull out, let's say with 20 pounds with speed, it's going to pull back with 30 to 40, right? And there's Bluetooth devices that will measure the wattage of output that you can see how much more you're getting on the eccentric return back. So basically you pull out hard and then you have to really fight to control the return back. We did a 6-week study with that and we saw 150% improvement in club head speed gains relative to just traditional uh, eh, rotary movement, right? So if you're doing rotary movement, let's say you were going to gain 2 miles an hour, you with eccentric, you'd gain three.
So rotary movement would be like kind of mimicking the backswing, like you're getting resistance as you're rotating away from the
Yeah, but
ball.
maybe even just super simple. Let's say you have your arms out in front, uh, like, and you just kind of with a bar and you just rotate
Got
like
it.
left and right. Like
Yeah.
you're just rotating your body and your torso.
So it's
There's
like
the
testing your like oblique strength and that type of stuff.
correct, right. So I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense if training my musculature eccentrically in frontal and sagittal, like in the other planes makes sense. It would make sense then going kind of side to side, transverse, like that would make sense too. That it's the same tissues. You would think that physiologically we'd have the same training effect, and so that was something that we definitely saw was hugely important too. The one challenge with that is not many gyms have eccentric flywheels because nobody knows what the heck they are, how to use them.
Yeah. They look
But
cool as like a home workout tool
they're
because I think
phenomenal
they're
for
they're
home
really
workout.
space efficient, right?
But yeah, they can. Yeah, I mean, from a rotary standpoint, they can just hook onto a wall. They don't take up much space. Um, but yeah, and I think it's cool because I got the tech built in where you can measure your wattage output
Mhm.
like time by time. They all have apps with them, and so that was a really cool finding that I think is important to note too. Just because I see so many golfers doing these like rubber band rotations and stuff, and I'm like, guys, there's a better way.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Adam, you
looking
have
at them
any
now on Google.
yeah,
No,
I've
I'm
seen them
looking at
before.
them,
They're
seeing how
cool. I
much they
love
are.
I love I love gadgets. I mean, that's why I've been a tonal user for I think 4 years now and I just absolutely love it. Not a paid endorser, but I just love the product. It's been very good.
Yeah, and I think that's the where a lot of the fitness stuff is going is using those home and those home units. You start putting in the AI and the camera capabilities and giving
Yeah.
feedback. And then
And
if
it
you can
saves
have
space too. I was gonna
yeah,
like build a squat rack and all this stuff, and I'm like, let me just get this thing that goes on the wall. You can do it all.
exactly.
Let's see. Um, well, thank you for all your time. I think we have you guys had set up a special landing page for our listeners to get the. Tell us more about the evaluation that people can get, and I'll tell them where to go.
Yeah, for sure. So basically what we try to do is give away the evaluation for free to everybody. So it's something you can do at home so you can assess all of your the rotary spot joints that we do when people come in here. You can see how you compare to other golfers your age. I think that's one of the really cool things is based on our database. If you're 45 or 85 or how do you compare to other people your age, as well as like how do you compare based on like how fast you're swinging. And then we'll also, if anybody wants, just for being a listener of the show, we'll also have the ability, we'll even let you jump on, we'll do a 45-minute free consult with you. So kind of talk through what your results mean, give you a better idea of the data specific
Careful, we have
to
a lot
your.
of listeners. We're gonna
We're,
overwhelm
we're
you.
prepared. It may just be a couple, maybe a week wait or so before we can get to you. But yeah, but I think the ultimate goal that we have is, yes, we're a business, and if you want to work with us, great. But I think the ultimate mission that we have is to help every golfer play this game as long as possible. And in my opinion, that starts with having the right information about your body and having a concept of what's normal for your age, which I don't think has been really available in the past. It's kind of been, how do you compare to Tiger? How do
Yeah.
you compare to Scotty, which is irrelevant, right? It's how do you compare to other people in your age bracket with your physical abilities? And so you can get all that for free now.
Cool. So we have it. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's par
It's
for success. Yeah.
par4success.com/, the sweet spot.
No, I think it's just sweet spot, Adam. I think you screwed that up.
Oh, really?
I think it's
Okay.
just sweet, but I think we made it easy. Less letters.
Yeah. All right. Let's try that
Yeah, yeah.
again. Par four,
Good.
as in the number four, success.com/sweet spot. I'll also put it in the show notes, but that's where you can get your free evaluation. I think I'm going to do the evaluation too. I kind of want to
Yeah,
see
me
what's
too.
going on here.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right. So par4success.com is obviously the company site, so people can learn more there. Any other resources? I think you guys have a YouTube page and other stuff.
Yeah, so we're
You've
on
given us a
YouTube.
ton of information. So, promote yourself now.
Yeah, we're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, Facebook. So I mean, we definitely put out a number of different things every single day. In the studio quite often, recording things. But I mean, those are all great resources. We try to put out a bunch of content, educate, give you lots of free resources there, and definitely check it out. And but I think the number one spot is to check out that home assessment, figure out where you're at, and then that at least give you an idea which of the thousands of videos, even just on our YouTube page, that you should be starting with.
Yeah, that is like relevance is a big issue in the golf swing and this stuff also. Very, very good topic to cover. All right. So we'll have that link in the show notes. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully people learn something new. We're always trying to give different angles on this topic. So thank you for that, Chris. Adam, where can everyone find your stuff?
LemyonGolf.com. John, where can people find your stuff?
Go check out my YouTube page, John Sherman Golf, and we'll see you next time with the new episode.